Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into what is, without a doubt, the most important part of your growing season, crop establishment. Get this right, and you're set up for success. Get it wrong, and you're playing catch-up all year. This is where your season is won or lost. Let's get into it. Just look at that. That is beautiful. A perfectly uniform, healthy, vigorous crop. Now, you might think that's luck, but it's not. It's the end result of a rock-solid strategy grounded in science. And that's exactly what we're going to break down for you today. So why all this focus on day one? Well, because a successful establishment kicks off a whole chain reaction of good things. You get rapid ground cover, which means your crop chokes out the weeds before they ever get a foothold. And most importantly, you establish the exact plant population that's going to determine your profitability for the entire season. And believe me, the stakes here are incredibly high. The single biggest lever you have to control your final grain yield is the number of heads, or ears, you have per square meter. Every single decision you make before and during planting feeds directly into that number. So, let's look at the factors you can actually control to nail this from the get-go. You know, the journey to that perfect stand actually starts way before you even think about firing up the planter. It starts with your number one input, the seed itself, and understanding what you're actually putting in the ground, well, that's absolutely non-negotiable. First thing you want to look for is this term right here, certified seed. Now, this isn't just some fancy marketing sticker they slap on the bag. This is a promise. It's a guarantee backed by a formal system that the seed inside is exactly the variety it says it is, with its genetics and quality held to a really high standard. Think of it like this. Using certified seed is basically an insurance policy for your crop's potential. It's peace of mind in a bag. You know you're getting what you paid for, and if something does go wrong, there's a system in place to handle it. It is your first and your best line of defense. Okay, now let's go a layer deeper than just germination. Let's talk about seed vigor. If germination is just a simple yes, it sprouted or no, it didn't, think of vigor as its report card grade. It's a measure of the seed's grit, its resilience, its ability to not just pop out of the ground, but to really thrive, even when conditions aren't perfect. You could have 2 bags of seed with the same 95% germination, but one has A+ vigor and the other is barely squeaking by with a C-. So, what makes for a high vigor seed? Well, it's a mix of these 4 things. The genetics, of course, play a huge part. How mature the seed was at harvest is also key, but then you have storage and the germination environment, and that's where a seed's true colors are shown. A high vigor seed is built to handle stress. All right, speaking of germination, for any seed to really unleash its potential, it needs 3 things from its environment. They are absolutely non-negotiable. We call this the germination trifecta. You need the right temperature, the right moisture, and the right contact. First up, temperature. It's a classic Goldilocks situation, not too hot and not too cold. Now sure, wheat can germinate outside this range, but that sweet spot between 12 and 25 degrees Celsius, that's where you get that rapid, uniform emergence that gives every single seedling its best possible start. Next up is moisture. A seed is basically a tiny, dehydrated engine. To get it started, it has to soak up water until it reaches about 35 to 45% internal moisture content. But you've got to walk a fine line here. Not enough water and that engine never turns over. Too much water and you actually cut off its oxygen supply and drown it. And oxygen is just as critical for that germination spark. And that brings us to the final piece of the trifecta, which is all about moisture, contact. It's simple, right? A seed can't drink water it isn't touching. Good, firm seed-to-soil contact is the bridge that lets that water move into the seed. And just look at the difference it can make. Depending on your planting method, you can see up to a 30% swing in establishment just based on how good that contact is. Okay, so we've picked a high-quality, high-vigor seed, and we've planted it into a perfect environment. What's next? Well, now we can talk about some of the amazing technologies we can use to protect that investment and give our seeds an even bigger edge. It's really important to know the difference between these 2 tools. Seed treatments, on the left, are like a shield. They're a coating of fungicide or insecticide that protects that little seedling from diseases and pests lurking in the soil. On the other hand, bacterial inoculants, specifically for legumes, are like hiring a partner for your plant. You're introducing beneficial bacteria that team up with the roots to pull nitrogen right out of the air. It's like having a little fertilizer factory attached to every plant. A massive advantage. All right, you've selected a top-tier seed, you've protected it. Now for the big one. This is where we take all this knowledge and turn it into a number. We're going to calculate exactly how much seed you need to plant to hit your goal. This is where theory meets the dirt. Now, don't let the formula intimidate you. It's actually pretty straightforward. You start with your goal, how many plants you want per square meter. You multiply that by the 1,000 kernel mass, which just accounts for how big or small your seeds are. And then you divide all that by your expected survival percentage, which accounts for the fact that in the real world, not every single seed makes it. So let's put some real numbers to this. Check out this table. We're assuming about 70% of our seeds will survive. Look at the first two rows. Same target population, but just going from a 36-gram seed to a 40-gram seed means you need to plant almost 10 kilograms more per hectare to get the same stand. Then, if you decide you want more plants, say 170, your rate jumps again. Precision is everything. So why do we go to all this trouble? Why do we obsess over this one calculation? Because of this. Research shows time and time again that the number of heads per square meter is the single biggest factor driving your final grain yield, period. And that number starts right here with your plant population. And just so we're all on the same page, let's lock in these two terms. Your seeding rate is your input. It's the kilos per hectare that you put in the planter. Your plant population is the outcome. It's the number of healthy plants you actually get growing in the field. The whole game is calculating the former to achieve the latter. We have covered a ton of ground here, from the tiny spark of life inside a seed all the way to the math that puts it in the soil. So let's wrap this up by connecting all these dots from that perfect plant population straight to a profitable season. Look, if you take anything away from this, let it be these 5 points. 1, start with quality certified seed. 2, understand that seed's vigor, its potential. 3, master that germination trifecta: temperature, moisture, contact. 4, protect your investment with the right treatments. And 5, do the math. Calculate your seeding rate to hit your target population. Getting crop establishment right is a massive win. You have officially set the yield potential for the entire season. But the job's not done. The big question now becomes, what are you going to do to protect that potential? How are you going to manage everything else to make sure every one of those plants you worked so hard to establish makes it to the finish line? We'll leave you with that to think about. Thanks for joining us.